Hello, everyone. My name is Ray Kiwis. I'm with the Housing and Community Development Department. Thanks for joining us. I just wanted to take care of a few housekeeping tips, and then we'll get the program started. Attendees have been automatically muted for today's presentation. Please use the Q&A feature to ask a question. Questions will be fielded throughout the presentation as time allows. Questions requiring additional consideration will be posted to the FAQ section of the p-chip call for projects webpage. If you experience any technical difficulties, log out of the presentation and then log back in. If this does not resolve the issue, please email Jason Thorpe for assistance. Today's webinar is being recorded. The presentation materials and the recording will be made available at our p-chip website, p-chip call for projects webpage. Again, my name is Ray Kiwis. I go by he, him pronouns, and I'm here with community development, housing and community development. And also attending is Pete Lee. He's the lead planner, and he takes care of our of all of our community facility projects. Today's agenda: CDBG funding program and background, funding opportunity overview. We'll give an overview of the application, project eligibility, competition timeline, performance period and spending requirements, application review process and evaluation criteria, special considerations and geographic priorities, eligible beneficiaries, and general program requirements. So to give you some background with CDBG, the CDBG is an entitlement funding. The city receives Community Development Block Grant CDBG program funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development on an annual basis. The city's entitlement is based on a formula that takes into consideration total population, population change, age, and condition of housing stock and poverty. The Community Development Block Grant Program was created by passage of the Housing and Community Development Act 1974. The purpose for CDBG is to develop viable urban communities through housing, expansion of community services, neighborhood revitalization, the elimination of slums or blight, and to expand economic opportunities for low and moderate income people. And so we have three national objectives that we need to meet, that your project will need to meet. It's either income-based, people served must earn less than 8% of area median income. It could be area-based, targeting people residing in a low-income census tract, or presumed benefit. Clients are presumed to be lower-income elderly, severely disabled adults, abused children, or homeless individuals, persons with AIDS, migrant farmers, or battered spouses. For more information, you can always go to the Code of Federal Regulations 24 CFR 570 for additional information on that. So with the Housing and Community Development Department, we'll go by HCD. For this presentation, the City of Tucson CDBG program is administered by HCD to provide programs and services to low and moderate income Tucson residents. Federal funds are subawarded every year to eligible not-for-profit subrecipient organizations and city departments to develop or improve community facilities through our CDBG programs. People, Communities, and Home Investment Plan, otherwise known as p-chip, was adopted by Mayor and Council on January 20th, 2021. And this plan creates framework for investing in Tucson's most vulnerable populations. It directs funding for homeless services, housing stability, neighborhood enhancements, and other community improvements. And wanted to share some of our HCD priorities. So as we advance through Advanced City of Tucson priorities through HCD, we have the 5-year consolidated plan for HUD entitlement programs. People, Communities, and Home Investment Plan, HUD 24 CFR 570, HUD Community Planning and Development Notices, City of Tucson CDBG Policies and Procedures, and CDBG Target Areas and Thrive Zones. The funding opportunity, the City of Tucson anticipates awarding approximately $1 million in CDBG program funds to city departments and not-for-profit organizations through this solicitation. The City of Tucson anticipates one or more awards through the fiscal year 2024 CDBG Community Facilities Program. Proposed projects must fall within the maximum budget of $1 million and a minimum of $100,000 request amount. Eligible applicants. They include not-for-profit agencies with IRS 501c3 designation, City of Tucson departments, grassroots organizations without 501c3 status may apply with a fiscal agent who meets all eligibility requirements. Neighborhood associations or groups without 501c3 status may apply with a sponsoring city department acting as the fiscal agent, and must be in good standing with the state of Arizona that primarily serves 51% low and moderate income Tucson residents. Applications must be registered, or applicants must be registered with the U.S. System for Award Management, otherwise known as SAM, have a valid SAM unique identity identifier at the time of application, not be suspended or disbarred from doing business with federal government, must maintain all eligibility requirements throughout the performance period. Non-profit organizations, applicant must be incorporated as a nonprofit, must provide programs and services to low and moderate income Tucson residents. Public and charter applicants must be an incorporated non-profit organization, must be located and contribute to revitalization strategies in one of the least targeted areas, or student population must primarily reside in a targeted neighborhood. Faith-based organizations. Applicants may not use CDBG funds to support religious activities. Faith-based organizations that participate in the CDBG program shall not discriminate against program beneficiary based on religion or religious beliefs. Components to the application, there's 4 of them. And if you go into Zoom grants, you'll see 4 different components there. The application, a tab for application summary, a tab for application questions, a tab for application budget, and then an area for required documents, attachments, and to upload your certifications. And all these required components must be submitted in Zoom Grants application portal by 11:59 p.m. Arizona time, Monday, February 13th. So the activities and projects, the activity could include construction projects, rehabilitation projects, and ADA modifications. Some examples of this would be senior and youth centers, domestic violence shelters, neighborhood facilities, homeless shelters, child care centers. This community facility category, it does not include housing facility projects. Again, the maximum is $1 million. The minimum request would be $100,000. And the projects must be shovel ready. All planning and design, including scopes, work, architecture, engineering, permitting, must be at an advanced stage and ready to bid to general contractors. Organizations must be ready to commence the CDBG project process, including environmental clearance, competitive bidding, and contracting by July 1 of 2023. And the organization must have structured all other funding to proceed with the project. Completion of projects is not contingent upon future fundraising commitments. With project eligibility, the services provided at the facility must be offered to low and moderate income Tucson residents. And further, one or more goals established by the City of Tucson p-chip. Demographic and area median income information must be collected by the organization and reported to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development through the city. CDBG funds are to be applied to hard construction costs only. Organizations are required to pay for all project-related soft costs, design, insurance, permitting through other sources, not through this source. This is just for hard costs, hard construction costs. And agencies must meet zoning and use requirements for the project scope. All applicants must meet that. So the timeline, January 18th, p-chip call for project was released. January 31st, we're now having the community facilities pre-proposal conference. Every Monday, we'll be submitting or uploading to our website FAQ responses posted to the p-chip webpage. February 3rd, 2023 is the last day to submit any application questions that you might have. February 13th is the application deadline, and March 1st would be the funding award recommendations would be announced. And keep in mind, funding recommendation must be reviewed and approved by the City of Tucson Mayor and Council. So the performance period is July 1st, 2023 through June 30, 2024. And project readiness, again, the project must be shovel ready to go by 1st, 2023. And all projects must be completed with final invoices paid out by June 30th, 2024. And any extensions, the project's selection does not obligate the city to extend performance periods. Operating fund capacity. The City of Tucson is prohibited from entering into any subaward agreements until fiscal year 2024 CDBG grant agreement has been signed with us by HUD. This generally occurs 3 to 4 months following the start of the project year. This means that applicants funded under this solicitation will be required to have sufficient operating capital available to cover the cost from July 1 to December 31st, 2023, while we both wait for an executable subaward document and initial payment. All eligible costs incurred after July of 2023 will be reimbursable, provided that the program requirements are met as of July 1st. Progressive spending. Projects are expected to progressively spend and invoice the City of Tucson as payments are made at least once a month. Tucson reserves the right to recapture subawarded funds at its discretion. This would happen if the city determines that the project is unlikely to be completed June 30th of 24, or if the city determines that the project has failed to make satisfactory progress during the performance period. The evaluation criteria. All proposals will be evaluated and based on the criteria published in this request for proposals. Evaluation criteria relates directly to the application contents. So answer each question fully and provide required attachments. Applications must intend to first improve community facilities, to establish or expand the organization's capacity to provide programs and services to low and moderate income Tucson residents. Advance local priorities and goals established in the 5-year consolidated plan for HUD entitlement programs and the p-chip people, communities, and homes investment plan. We'll get into the application review now. There'll be it first starts with a department review, and then the application to an equity and impact analysis. Then our director will review it. Then we have a community oversight review. And finally, those recommendations will go to mayor and council for adoption. Going a little deeper into the review, the HCD department review, the city will first conduct a threshold review, and anything meeting that threshold, anything getting through the threshold review, and you'll see at Exhibit A, there's to this solicitation, there's the criteria for the threshold review. If it meets the threshold review, we move into a community facilities review panel. And then it'll be reviewed by a panel, and that evaluation criteria is provided as Exhibit B in the solicitation. Once your application goes through that, we go through an equity and impact analysis, advancing racial equity. The City of Tucson Housing and Community Development Department will conduct equity and impact analysis for all projects using the criteria defined in Exhibit B. Organizations funded under this solicitation are expected to facilitate internal practices to promote racial equity practices. So we have the director's review now. The HCD director will recommend funding to the mayor, City of Tucson Mayor and Council based on recommendations received from the HCD review panel and the results of equity and impact analysis. The director may adjust funding recommendations to ensure diversity of services and organizations funded. Geographic areas of the city are covered, and achievement of equity goals and furtherance of the City of Tucson priorities. Community oversight. Projects recommended for funding by the director are reviewed by the City of Tucson's Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. The commission will return recommendations to the director for adjustment or forward a recommendation for adoption to the City of Tucson Mayor and Council. And then with Mayor and Council, City of Tucson Mayor and Council shall review the recommendation issued by the director and may modify funding recommendations by vote or at its discretion. Again, some special considerations, pay close attention to advancing it, equity and inclusion found on page 11. We will retention of proposals for future use. We can hold on to them up to 2 years after the permits period at our discretion to perhaps fund in the future. And multiple applications accepted for City of Tucson departments, provided that they are different facilities and different projects, but nonprofit agencies are limited to one application. Geographic priorities and target areas. CDBG target area reflects neighborhoods with the largest concentration of low and moderate income households. The CDBG target area represents approximately 18% of the city, which is about 44 out of 242 square miles. Projects located within and or prioritizing delivery of services for persons residing in the CDBG target area or Thrive zones will be prioritized for funding under this solicitation. And we have the Thrive zones. We have Thrive in the 05. The Oracle Miracle area is targeted for community-based crime reduction. The Thrive approach looks holistically at a place identifying a vision to transform both the environment and opportunities for residents to thrive through education, services, and jobs. Again, projects located in the Thrive zone will be prioritized for funding under this solicitation. And then our other Thrive zone is 29th Street Thrive Zone. It's by 22nd Street to North Golf Links and from Alvernon to Craycroft. And I'll show you some maps in a couple. This area was selected to address community challenges such as violent crimes and neighborhood vulnerability. And what we're seeking strengthening community assets such as anchor institutions like schools, healthcare facilities, existing neighborhood associations, community leadership, and shared community identity. Projects located within this Thrive Zone will be prioritized for funding under this solicitation. And here we have the CDBG target area. And we have the Thrive in the 05. We call it Thrive in the 05 is 85705 zip code, which is pretty much the Miracle Mile area, Miracle Island Grant, and the 29th Street Thrive Zone. Eligible beneficiaries and costs. Primarily, the beneficiaries are intended to primarily benefit low and moderate income individuals and families residing in the city of Tucson city limits, and primarily is defined as 51% low and moderate income Tucson residents. You can find information on that all through the RFP and page 14. Projects funded will be required to document and report each beneficiary's household ability as extremely low income, or moderate income, with the exception of projects which will exclusively serve one or more of the presumed benefit relations. Eligible costs. CDBG funds may only be used to pay construction hard costs associated with proposed community facilities project. That includes site improvements, labor, materials, equipment. Does not include fees and permits. Davis-Bacon wages requirements apply and may affect construction or rehabilitation project costs. So if you're not familiar with Davis-Bacon, look to the page 31 of the RFP. And a full list of expenses can be found in 2 Code of Federal Regulations, CFR Part 200, and Title 24 CFR Parts 570. Ineligible activities and costs, construction and rehabilitation of housing units or admin offices, projects that do not primarily serve low and moderate income Tucson residents, pre-project expenses, political activities, religious activities, project services that promote religion, income payments, stipends, marketing, fundraising, payment or debt of project expenses, and any costs incurred prior to July 1, 2023. Ineligible costs include operation or maintenance costs, entertainment furnishings, and personal purchases, or costs associated with delivery of admin or public services at assisted facilities. General program requirements. So we have with matching requirements, applicants are not required to provide matching funds. The city may prioritize projects which demonstrate considerable leveraged funds in which the city is not the sole source of the project funding. With billing, monthly or quarterly billing schedule is needed prior to award. The city shall authorize payments according to completion to benchmarks. Project funds not fully expended on or before June 30th, 2024 are subject to repayment to the city of Tucson by August 15th, 2024. With reporting, timely submission of monthly, quarterly, and annual reports, or we might require to provide other reports during the performance period as needed to comply with directives from mayor and council. And monitoring, the city of Tucson will monitor to ensure compliance with federal and local requirements, and will monitor your project for achievements and goals. Again, the application can be completed online through Zoom grants. If you need any more information, you can go to our p-chip Call for Projects page, any questions after this webinar, you will be able to submit to HCD grants, and we will be happy to respond. And those responses will be posted on Monday at the site above. Just wanted to recap in closing just the timeline. We know the RFP has been released. The pre-proposal conference is happening now. The Q&A posted to p-chip website every Monday. The last day to submit your questions is February 3rd, 2023. Applications are due February 15th, and the award announcements will be on March 1st. So now now is the Q&A session. So please, if you'd like to participate in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. And hi, everyone. This is Jason Thorpe with the City of Tucson as well, he, him pronouns. There were a number of questions that came in during the session. So we're going to go ahead and we've answered those in the Q&A as the session's gone on, but we'll also read them here so that everyone who's present has those answers. We'll also give folks an opportunity to add any additional questions that you'd like to either the Q&A feature, or you can also simply raise your hand in the use the raise your hand feature, and we can unmute you so that you're able to just speak and ask your question, which is sometimes easier if the question's sort of complex. So the first question that we received says that the RFP says that projects can serve residents anywhere in Tucson, but that there are priority target areas. In Zoom grants, there's a question asking if you serve any of those priority areas or thrive zones. There's no option to say other or no. And on the public services application, that was a required question, and we couldn't submit the application without clicking one of the boxes. Is that the case with this application as well? And how do we respond if we are serving low-income residents, but our facility is not located in one of those priority areas? Thanks for that question. And I know we learned about that very late in the public service application period and made a correction to the application in Zoom grants to allow a none feature. That correction has also been made in the public facility application. So there is, and this is in question 7 in the Zoom grants application, is where this comes up. And there is now a none of the above option that applicants can select. The next question says, we're struggling with a 10-year lien requirement because our property has a mortgage and an additional lien on that property that is something that we do not believe our bank will accept. We understand why the requirement's in place, but because otherwise people will make improvements to their property, but not necessarily commit to serving the desired populations. Is there another way to legally bind us to the 10-year requirement? And then the question goes on a bit, but ultimately the question is, are there alternatives to a lien being placed on the property? And unfortunately, we do not waive that requirement. So any community facility projects funded through this funding will be required to place a 10-year lien and contract terms that both if they sell or sell the property, the funds are repaid, and also if the use of the property is no longer a CDBG eligible use within that 10 years, that the funds are repaid. The next question asks if slides are going to be available after the webinar. They absolutely are. So Ray mentioned the p-chip website a couple of times. So if I will throw that in the chat box once we get through this list of questions I'm reading off. But we'll put that link there. And so the webinar, the slides will be posted, as will the recording of this session by the end of the week this week. That's also the same site you want to check weekly, usually on like a Tuesday morning. Set your calendar to go check that website for any updates to the FAQ documents. The FAQ document is considered like that, does have bearing on the RFP. So really important that you're checking that routinely. The next question, if the 501c3 is applying for the award, but does not own the property, but leases it with a long-term lease from a separate owner, that's not a 501c3, and they would have to lien on their property, is that acceptable? If you have a question about that, it really is very situationally specific. It's the length of the term of the lease that you have with the organization or with the landlord, whether you have a lease that does cover you through the next 10 years, and some considerations that we need to take. So it's pretty context specific. So please email hcdgrants@tucsonaz.gov Again, that's HCD, like Housing and Community Development, grants with an S at tucsonaz.gov with that question. And then we can get some additional detail and let you know if that's a project that would be eligible or not. The next question asks, what are the details for non-housing or facility building related projects? And so that came from Marianne Bierling. And Marianne, I don't totally know if I understand the specific that you're getting to the question. So I've gone ahead and made it so that you can unmute if you'd like to unmute and ask us.
Yeah, I did respond to you. Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Ray, for the overview. We've been donated a commercial kitchen that is pretty updated, and to start a job training program with other partners in the community for people who are transitioning from homelessness. And so it's not a rehab of a building, although there's some work to do in the kitchen. This is about expanding the services of the nonprofit to the community and economic mobility for homeless persons. Thank you.
Right, and Ray, are you fielding that? Like, Ray?
No, I'm not. I'm at a loss with that right now.
All right, Pete, do you want to field that?
What is she rehabbing? I don't understand what she's got the kitchen. Marianne, what are you exactly looking? What's the project?
Can I unmute? Okay, good. Hi, everybody. I'm sorry that this is left. We can talk offline if you want for more information. But it is in a building. The job training in that building will be open to the job training in kitchen activities, everything from cooking to job placement. And it's an expansion of services to the community because we will be serving food to the community, and it's also an expansion of the nonprofit's capacity to provide services to this population. The question is, there is a little bit of rehab and work to do in the kitchen, and then we've got the labor of starting implementing the program.
So I can field that. So Marianne, the cost of rehabilitating a kitchen would potentially be allowable on this opportunity. There is a prohibition on the purchase of any equipment. And so often for commercial kitchens that, much of the need is equipment, which isn't eligible under the Community Development Block Grant. So you might want to shoot an email to hcdgrants@tucsonaz.gov with what some of the specific costs are, and that would help folks be able to tell you what would or wouldn't be eligible. This funding opportunity cannot cover any of the costs associated with staffing or the delivery of any activity that would be a public services activity. Okay. So this is really capital costs only.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right, then, so we have some new questions that have come up in the chat box. So the first question is, would renovations of a current low-income housing unit qualify?
For the purpose of the solicitation, we're not addressing any housing at this time. So the answer would be no.
Thank you. Next question. If social services are provided primarily at clients' homes and out of the office, but our staff and program materials are in the space we want to invest in, are we eligible? And I'm going to go ahead and unmute Lee Hopkins, who asked that question, because my belief is that folks may want a little more information to be able to answer that question.
Hi. Thanks. Did you just ask the social services out of the office?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Our program and our teams are based in the Community Safety Hub, which is a new building in the city of Tucson. And, we're kind of multi-departmental teams working together, but providing social services and homeless outreach and a combination of other, population-focused services. And so we don't have our clients necessarily coming to the office for services. We are going out in our vehicles and meeting folks where they're at. And so we just wanted to know if we would still be eligible. That the services don't have to physically be provided in the space, or whether they do.
Jason, would you mind taking that?
Happy to. So thanks for the question, Lee. Unfortunately, or depending on how you look at it, unfortunately for folks like y'all that might be looking for this funding opportunity, the answer there is no. The community development block grant is really designed to, its public facility projects are designed to invest in capital projects that the facility is used to benefit low and moderate income people, and that it has open public access. So that you're either specifically serving low and moderate income people out of that space, or that the building has is just a general public access and is it located in an area predominantly low and moderate income. So, like libraries, things like that could be funded. But staff office spaces, even those spaces that are not, even if the service that you're providing is very aligned to the purpose of the funding, funding workspaces that are not actually used to deliver the service wouldn't be eligible.
Thank you.
All right, the next question. All right, there's a question that asks about a specific application from an applicant. So I'm going to, if you have a question about a specific application you've submitted, please go ahead and email hcdgrants@tucsonaz.gov. We won't get into individual application issues in this proposal. Then Lee asked if funding can be partly used to invest in IT infrastructure that improves our data security and access. So of course, we've just covered that project probably won't be eligible. However, in general, if you have questions about IT infrastructure, there are very specific limits. Generally speaking, if it is equipment that is broadband and attached to the facility is not movable, it is eligible because it is integral to the facility. If that equipment can be moved, it is not eligible within the context of a public facilities application. Specifically in our projects, we are really looking to invest in capital projects. And so if you're thinking about wanting to include something like IT, I would encourage you to email hcdgrants@tucsonaz.gov. Again, we can talk about that specifically with you and see whether it would be allowable. And if you include that type of an activity and it's a small percentage of the overall cost, and even if we determine through the application that that's not an eligible activity, it won't preclude your project from being funded, but that may be removed. The next question comes from Beth Morrison. Is there an expected percentage of people or of what primarily serves relates to is low and moderate income? So I think the question there is when we say that a facility or project must be used primarily to serve low and moderate income persons, is there a specific percentage of persons that constitutes that primarily serves?
Yes, and you'll find that in the RFP, and it's 51%.
And then the last question we have right now in the chat comes from Lori Malangoni. And I apologize if I've just made a mistake with your name. But can you explain more about income eligibility and what kind of verification is required? I'm not clear on if that needs to be provided in the application or after the project.
That would be provided for the project, and you'd have to collect eligibility documentation showing that your clientele is 80%, at least 80% area median income. The verification would be pay stubs, W-2s, any kind of income verification that you'd be collecting on site at the time of that they're receiving those services. But I hope this answer is clear enough for you. If not, please feel free to send an email for more clarity or for what those what those household family wages would be.
Great, thank you. That looks like right now, at least, those are the only questions we have in the Q&A, and we also don't see any hands raised. So I would like to make one reminder, and I did throw this in the chat box as well. So as many of you know, and particularly those of you who have gone through our public service application process recently are aware, the city has significantly increased its attention to racial equity and housing justice in within our application processes. And so we've included expanded demographic data reporting for board members and staff that are required as part of our p-chip applications. So there are mandatory staff diversity worksheet and a board diversity worksheet. And it includes things beyond sort of race, ethnicity, and gender, which maybe are what organizations are used to collecting and reporting on. Those are mandatory data collections. We've included in those instructions suggestions of using anonymous surveys or other ways to collect that data. So we want to make sure that everyone's aware that those that data collection is required for application. And so if you haven't begun putting those worksheets together, the worksheet templates are in the Zoom Grants application on the Documents tab. I encourage you to go there and to begin that data collection now so that you can submit the full information with your application. In the event that something is missing, it can be determined to be a threshold deficiency after application, and you'll have 5 days to correct it. If that information is not provided, unfortunately, it will be removed from consideration. So it is, this is something that we've partnered with the Office of Equity Initiatives on and are requiring for all p-chip applications this year. With that, well, if there are any remaining questions, this is last call for questions. Otherwise, you can always email hcdgrants@tucsonaz.gov. And we will be happy to respond to that by posting to the FAQ document. So you won't receive an email in response. You need to check the FAQ document that following Tuesday. Each Monday that is uploaded. We have a question. Betty Bitgood's hand is raised. So Betty, I'm allowing you, you're now able to speak.
Yes, with that, the first CDBG grant that was due on the 10th, you couldn't seem to be able to enter answers to questions on that website that you highlighted. Did you fix that glitch?
I'm not sure if I know what, can you provide a little more information, Betty?
Well, I know that there was not enough opportunity to post answers to questions for that particular funding, and it was emailed to us later on in the in that process. But I'm assuming that you will be posting the answers to questions just as you indicated today, correct?
Yes, yeah. Thank you. So there was 1 week in late December in which we weren't able to post, and so it was emailed out in lieu of posting. But it was a temporary glitch that 1 week, and then weekly posting resumed after that. And so yes, we've been posting weekly, and we'll continue to do so.
Okay, just checking. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we have a question from Chief Paul Moore, and you should speak now.
Yeah, I was curious if it's possible to have a combination of both, maybe construction-related capital projects, improvements, and equipment. I know we discussed this a little bit, Jason, but or is it you strictly looking for one type of thing, or if there can be I guess I'm asking if there can be a hybrid approach to it.
Yeah, so, and Ray, I'll fill this because this gets a little nuanced. So there is, for everyone else who is thinking, I just heard him say that equipment wasn't allowed, there is one exception to equipment allowances in the Community Development Block Grant Program, and that is fire equipment. So specifically with fire departments, Chief Moore is with Tucson Fire. So Tucson Fire is able to request some specific equipment. It's equipment we posted in the FAQ document last week. So that information, that like fire engines, emergency medical vehicles, fire equipment, jaws of life, those items are all allowable. And you could do a hybrid application where you may be applying for a capital project and an equipment. And if you're thinking about some of that, Chief, what we might want to do is have a conversation, send an email to our team to figure out whether it makes the most sense to put those together as one application or to put in separate applications for each activity.
Perfect.
And that will likely be about kind of the site that the project occurs at.
That's what I needed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And for everyone else, please disregard everything right there. And remember, unless you are the fire department, equipment is entirely ineligible. We have any other questions? No. All right, in that case, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you, Ray, for this presentation. And we wish you all the best of luck as you work through your applications.